because it's not set up.
Oh, yeah, that would help. Duh. What the hell is it? Oh boy, I'm in a rough shape.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Did you get that
That's
email?
what she looks like.
Did you get that email I sent you?
I did, and I sent a message on the document itself. I don't know if you could do that,
Yeah.
so I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because I didn't know if you like printed it for class. I just made like a couple grammatical things.
Mm-hmm.
It still is a weird image, isn't it?
Well, it's because you're projecting the computer screen here. So it's
It's showing, like,
recording
an
itself.
But then I need to go to the computer screen.
Well, once you take it off of the YouTube camera face and put it like to a website, it'll be fine. But it was recording a recording of a recording.
Okay, but normally to do computer, I gotta hit computer.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, and now you just open a new tab on the computer itself.
But will it,
It'll stop doing that once you.
so if I go to Google Chrome, yeah, but I guess what I'm confused about, because I haven't done this yet, is I gotta get what I'm putting up for everyone to see. And you think I'll be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I'll trust you.
It's just like when you hold like two mirrors together, you keep seeing like the image bouncing back and
I
forth.
know, but, Olean, can you see the icon screen?
Yes.
Okay, and it's clear?
Yeah.
I'm confusing myself. I had a little bit of a cold. It was a stressful week. It's cold in here. So, the reason I put that up there is the website is up and running. There's no messaging going on right now. But what we're gonna do today is take a tour, and then at the end, I'll give you all, probably not be able to do opening statements today. And probably as of now, between this class and the other class, I'm hopelessly behind, but that's okay. Everybody's doing their work, and I can't keep up with you. So, but that's not a bad thing. And I know, Megan, you had that article you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But probably we'll just have to do the website today, so. Okay. I think we, thanks to the help of the students, got everything all set. Today we're showing our website, so I think we're good.
Have fun.
Yeah, thank you. So we can chat amiably until we officially start. We got 1 minute. And which class is it?
History.
Which history, world or American?
World.
What are you doing your project on?
Ancient Greek wrestling.
Ancient Greek wrestling? Really? Why did you pick that topic?
I've done wrestling. Well, I don't wrestle myself, but like my brother did. So I, was kind of forced into watching it. And eventually you just I like watching the sport now. So I like history. So
Why would you move back to Buffalo, even though I haven't lived there for 34 years? I still, one of the things the reason I won't go back is the obsession with the Bills. So, sports is, I would like to go to a baseball game, but.
Have you been to the Baseball Hall of Fame?
No, because I like going to the games, like now that we're going to have baseball again here in Jamestown with the Carp Skunks or whatever it's called. I'm excited. Because last year we didn't have baseball and I just missed it desperately because they used to love on a free night coming down to the ballpark. So, actually, I think I was at the Hall of Fame, but it would have been so long ago.
Yeah, it's not very far. I know it's in Cooperstown. I don't know if that's New York or not, though.
Yeah, Cooperstown is New York, but it's a long way off. It's way at the other end of the state.
Yeah.
And I once was training teachers in Cooperstown. And I think I had some free time to go to the whole thing, but that was a long time ago.
Well, we went to have like a competition out there, so we stopped by and we had some free time.
Yeah. Okay, so this is, I'll give you, you probably can't see that little login thing. If you can, that's fine. Our sim number, our simulation number is 5824. So that you can certainly write down. Because as I mentioned to you before, there's more than one simulation out there. Ours is 5824. And you can see it takes me to EU Palestine or Sweden, because that's left over from last year. So, although I think Joyce said I can use you can just put in Palestine and that should work. When World Politics, we were going through EU, North Korea, and we ended up just looking at Palestine. It's 88U5 7 TW. I think I got it. Let's see if I got it right. Oh, I entered the wrong password. Let me try that again. I think I left something out. Oh, it's got 3 8s, that's why. My vision is a little blurred from this cold. The cold medicine. Okay, so I think I'm going to sneeze. Maybe. I was right, it was just delayed.
Bless you.
So I'll give you all the sign-in information again before we stop, but once you get into it, you can see the 7 participants, and if you're not familiar with various flags, when you put the icon over it, it'll tell you that's Brazil, that's China, that's Italy, that's North Korea, that's Mexico, that's Russia, obviously that's the United States. There's us, Palestine, we do have a flag, and then of course the European Union. And we are now logged in as the Palestinian Authority, and you can see it lists 2 other teams that are running out of my other class, North Korea and European Union. So today I'm going to take you on a tour of the website, give you the sign-in information, and then because it's up and running, even though there are no messages because we haven't started the simulation yet, you can start going in there and just playing around. And in fact, I would urge you to do that to make sure that your computer's here or wherever you are, wherever you're checking in, if it's your own computer, a school computer, at home, wherever, you shouldn't have any trouble. And I've been checking all 3 of ours, so we're okay. Now, I'm going to do this backward. If you notice here, it says resources. And many of you have the simulation scenario. And if you don't, it is available electronically. So if you need to refer to it at any time and you don't have the hard copy, or you don't have the one that I may have sent you as an attachment to the email, the whole thing is right there for you, which is very handy. And then,
No.
Oh, why did I do that? Oh, there we go again, sorry. What were you gonna ask me?
Oh, I was just gonna say, don't click that X. Don't click that X. No. You'll shut everything down. There you go.
I took us out of it. Sorry. I went too fast and easy enough to get back in. 5824 Palestine. No. Got it right. Yeah. Let's go back to resources. So the other thing it has is country resources. So we were looking at it this morning in my other class, and right now there's nothing on the European Union, which is kind of strange. But we do have the Palestinian Authority. So you can see that it gives you the flag, it gives you some background, and then gives us a couple of nice maps. The top map, of course, is the Gaza Strip, which is physically separated from the West Bank. And you can see that it borders Egypt, and then Israel is around it, although Israel regards the Gaza Strip as part of Israel. But nonetheless, you can see the Mediterranean Sea, even though we don't have access, we're not allowed to fish, we don't have an open port. All seems kind of ludicrous, but that's our present situation. And then it gives the West Bank, and you can see Israel, Jordan on the one side, the Dead Sea, of course, and then sort of in the middle is Jerusalem, which, as we know, is a contested city, except Israel says its capital. The United States recognizes that. We, as the Palestinians, claim it as the capital. That, of course, is where I stayed, and then again, I was in Hebron. Nablus and Ramallah is the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority. So it gives us a fairly nice map. And then you'll notice it gives us more information. So this morning, when we went into the North Korean website, because the Dunkirk class is playing North Korea, we noticed that on per capita GDP, North Korea was $1,800 per person. The United States is $56,000 per person. So you can see that North Korea is really quite poor. But then if looking at Palestine, and this just did the Gaza Strip, but you can see it's rated as not free. And it gives a little explanation. The political rights and civil liberties of Gaza residents are severely constrained by multiple layers of interference. No kidding. Israel's de facto blockade of the territory, even though it's a violation of international law, along with its periodic military incursions and rule of law violations, has imposed serious hardships on the civilian population, as has Egypt's tight control over the Rafah border crossing in the south. Meanwhile, the Hamas militant group governs Gaza without democratic legitimacy, and its unresolved schism with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank has contributed to legal confusion and repeated postponement of overdue elections. So President Abbas is up in Ramallah in the West Bank, asserting that he also has control through the PA over Gaza, but this is part of the problem facing us as Palestinians. Whereas those opposed to us are united, not only are we disunited in the Arab world, but within Palestine itself. There's a split between Hamas, which is classified as a terrorist group, and the PA, headed by President Abbas, which is accused by Hamas as being basically just doing Israel's dirty work. But when you look at the Palestinian Authority and the people who work for it, and the Israelis pay for that, but it is in many cases the only employment that people in the Palestinian area in the West Bank can count on. So lots of people work for the PA and in fact act as a surveillance force for the Israeli Defense Forces, yes, which makes people, how many people working for the PA in jobs with benefits funded by the Israelis. And do you have to do some of their dirty work and keep an eye on their own people? Yes, but You know, if you got a family to feed and it's regular employment, and, you know, also that keeps us divided. It keeps the West Bank and Gaza under Hamas divided, and then within the West Bank, it keeps us divided between those of us who have jobs with the PA and those of us who don't. And so Hamas thinks anybody who works for the PA is a traitor. Those who don't get jobs with the PA get very angry because they're having trouble making their lives and feeding their children. And so you got at least three groups split. And I would suggest to you this is not accidental, that in fact Israel does this historically because we're so badly divided, we can't present a united front. And of course, this is just on the Gaza Strip. Now, it's near 2 million people, but it's just the fact that to hold joint elections in the West Bank and Gaza Strip in October, but the PA government chose to postpone them all by at least 4 months after the PA High Court of Justice suspended the Gaza voting due to legal irregularities. Non-governmental organizations, NGOs, came under scrutiny and pressure from both Israeli and Hamas authorities, with Hamas attempting to impose its own regulations and Israel accusing some aid workers of links to Hamas. Reconstruction efforts in the wake of a 2014 conflict between Israel and Hamas faltered during the year due to Israeli imposed restrictions on the entry of building supplies into Gaza. And I still have to get copies of that article, but once this became available, I wanted to get into it. So there's a bad split between the PA and Gaza, clearly, and then they give you some more information. Now, if we look at political rights in Gaza, the best score is to get a 40, we have a 3, which is not as bad as North Korea, because when we went into North Korea website, they have a 0 on 40. So things are a little better. 0 out of 12 on electoral process, 2 out of 16 on participation, and 1 on functioning of the government. So I would suggest that you want to go into this and spend a little time looking at it, because it gives you some really good information. And you'll know here, the ability of Gazan officials to make and implement policy is limited by Israeli and Egyptian border controls, Israeli military actions, and the ongoing schism with the internationally recognized PA structure in the West Bank. We are badly divided. And please note this, Freedom in the World, this is them attempting to look objectively at our situation, and it's definitely worth reading through. So feel free to spend some time playing around with it. Let me see if anybody has a question before I go ahead. Any questions or comments? Now, I don't want to hit the X, right? Or can I hit the X here?
You can hit the small X.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I really liked was the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. They have some good stuff up close. If I got so much cooling, I could open a store. It's ridiculous. Anyways, the BBC is relatively objective looking at us from the outside. So the Palestinian population of around 10, or the British spelling. But this little map is pretty good too, because again, it shows the separation between the West Bank and Gaza, and then it shows what's surrounding us, the Mediterranean Sea, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. And it has Ramallah and Jerusalem, which are very close. Ramallah is the headquarters of the PA. Jerusalem is our, we insist that it's our capital. Israel says it's its, and the United States has recognized Israel's claim. And they're very physically close to each other, but to go from Jerusalem to Ramallah, as I did, you have to go through a wall and a security check. And so you take a bus up to the wall, get off the bus, go through the security, and then either walk, take a cab, or walk in Ramallah, because it's right up against the city. And so it says, efforts to create a Palestinian state on the west bank of the River Jordan in Gaza on the Mediterranean coast have been frustrated, I'll say, by the continuing conflict with Israel and disputes over the status of diaspora Palestinians. And of course, again, there's that physical separation. The war that followed Israel's declaration of independence in 1948 saw the former British mandate of Palestine partitioned between Israel, Transjordan, and Egypt. Jordan is just Jordan now, it's not called Transjordan anymore. And then, of course, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled, I think it's closer to 750,000, out of their native land during the war in what they call the Nakba, or catastrophe, which is nothing new, you know that. And then the other thing is they give you a timeline of key dates. And now Paragold they weren't selling me anything this morning. Why are they selling me now? Picture of Jerusalem in 1870, and then they take you through a long series of dates. There is Britain's Lord Balfour, the guy with his hand up pointing to a feature in Jerusalem. So the man that we're blaming for everything, there he is with his sunglasses. Paragold keeps selling me stuff. And then I'm not going to go through all the dates, but this is a nice historic summary. And then you get to 1948, Israel declares independence and the British mandate ends. You notice in the late 30s, there was an Arab revolt. You also notice in 47, the UN recommended partition of Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem being an international city. I don't know if that's workable anymore, but that was the original recommendation, although the Palestinians still regard that as the start of the Nakba. And then that's a picture of a little boy. Thousands of Palestinians were forced out or fled from their homes in the war that followed Israel's independence. It gives you some history about the war. And that's where, notice, at least 750,000 Palestinian Arabs either flee or are expelled. This speaks about how that happened endure to this day. So, a group in Egypt to carry out raids into Israel. And then it takes you through all key dates. So it's a nice historical summary. The PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, led by Yasser Arafat, is not the same as the Palestinian Authority. And you note in 1974, Yasser Arafat becomes the first non-state leader to address the UN General Assembly. And if you go to Ramallah, he's considered to be a hero for the Palestinian people. The Israelis think of him as being a jackal, a terrorist. And he has quite the impressive gravesite next to the Palestinian Museum, which is brand new, which we didn't get enough time to spend in there. I really wanted to spend more time in it. But it's guarded by the PA's police force, paid for by Israel. So this has all the dates. I would encourage you to take a look at these dates. It's a nice discussion. And it takes up now, here's the Intifada. One of the Intifadas, this is when people got fed up with being oppressed by Israel. There's been two of these, and they just started throwing rocks, because that's all they had. You can see they're throwing rocks. And the Israelis responded with tear gas, machine guns, and weapons. And then in 2002, March, Israeli Army launches Operation Defensive Shield. on the West Bank and begins building those horrible war walls to stop armed Palestinians entering Israel. And so that's the date of the wall. They call it Operation Defensive Shield. Here's a picture of the founder of Hamas, who was assassinated in 2004. In fact, it shows that Israel killed him. Hamas wins the election, and again, it says, who are Hamas? So it says here, against Israel's occupation. So the nice thing about this BBC website is, if you keep filing all these little prompts, you can earn more and more. And then there's a protest hoping the boardroom wanted to see my dad, a little girl with a stuffed animal. So the charge is it's collective punishment, even against people who may not have participated. And then if we go to 2011, the Palestinian National Authority launches campaign for UN membership of the state of Palestine as means of highlighting stalled talks with Israel. Bid fails, but UNESCO accepts Palestine as a member, at least to preserve cultural things. And then November 2012, 2012, UN upgrades Palestinian representation to that of, quote, non-member observer state, unquote, allowing it to take part in General Assembly debates and improving chances of joining UN agencies. So we, as the Palestinian Authority, we don't have an independent nation state. We do have a seat inside the General Assembly, which is important, but it doesn't really run the UN. That's the Security Council. But notice it says we are a non-member observer state. We can't be admitted into membership because we're not a nation state, so we can only be admitted as an observer, but notice it says state. So that's tacit recognition. And then, of course, it takes you up through the days. So it takes you all the way. 2019, November, the United States says it no longer considers Israeli settlements on the West Bank to be illegal. International law says it is illegal. So in effect, the United States has chosen to ignore international law, which is really unfortunate because I used to be able to say, at least until this president, that Republican or Democrat, Justice Jackson from Jamestown was the chief prosecutor. He also was one of the proponents of international law. Unfortunately, the current president has backed off. He basically violates international law. And you can see December 2017, US President Donald Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It says upsetting the Arab world and Western allies, it definitely did, but it's also, that too is a violation of international law. So to a certain extent, the United States is, depending on who you talk to, is criminal with breaking the law. It's really sad because the UN was an American idea. Justice Jackson prosecuting the Nazi criminals in Nuremberg did it under judicial procedure, under international law, and expanded the scope. And most presidents, for the most part, both Democrat and Republican, all the way up to the current one, at least if they were going to bend or violate international law, try to make some sort of justification. There is no justification coming out of the Trump administration. They just ignored it, which I think is unfortunate, to say the least. And as an American, very disturbing to me. So, I can hit that one, I think. And then you see noon prayers on Friday near the Dome. Muslims were allowed in there because you normally need a permit, whereas when I visited there, I could go in with my passport. Muslims believe that Muhammad, the prophet, ascended into heaven on a white horse. And so in the middle, in the cave, is got a railing around it that you can go in there. And it's a very holy site. Of course, in the mosque, you take your shoes off, but the floor has got a nice rug on it. So, and it goes even further into Hamas and Fatah and people on the beach at Gaza Strip. So there's a lot of stuff in here to add to all our knowledge about Palestine and to help us with any of our claims. So now I can go on this X, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just can't do the big one. See, I can be taught. So World Bank country at a glance. I'm not sure what it'll tell us. So there's even more information here. With the World Bank, which is a specialized agency at the UN helping to build up the West Bank and Gaza. It points out here it's an unsustainable economic situation. So again, my suggestion is there's so much stuff in here. Let's see what it says if I hit that. Yeah, it just takes you to a lot of documents. So there's basically too much stuff out there. And I gotta keep my eye on the clock. It's got a lot of tables and charts. And again, I would just suggest there's basically, again, too much information, but I'm just going through this very quickly. So there's more stuff in there than you could possibly use. But it's there all will be posted. And if you look at the message center, you can do public messages by clicking on all. You can do private messages by clicking on countries that you want it to go to. You can ask a question of SimCon. SimCon is the person who oversees the simulation to make sure that none of us do anything inappropriate, like use language or attack people. We're going to be demanding stuff, but we can't be attacking people. And we don't usually have that big of a problem. In this one, the high school one, sometimes some of the kids act inappropriately. Ours, for the most part, is pretty good. But keep in mind that SimCon, and I don't know who SimCon is, she always seems to be a female professor someplace. But SimCon will monitor everything, and if she thinks you stepped out of line, like one of your messages just went into being like nasty or rude or inappropriate, you might get a message saying you really shouldn't do that. And then you notice that our general opening statements will be other. And then, of course, they got the 3 specific ones. So you put in a title, subject, opening statement, and then the message you can cut and paste once it's ready, or type however you want to deal with it. But obviously, there's nothing in here yet because we're not ready with the, no, I'm not going to have a problem if I hit this X, right?
Yeah, you'll
Really?
get out of it, yeah. You can just, or maybe not.
No, I think we'll try it. No, we're
Okay.
okay on that one. So then what you'll see, we have the live conferences, pre and post, it'll be in the conference center. And then you'll note that there's a proposal center. There are obviously no proposals in here, but that's what we're eventually going to be doing. We will do one proposal center requires us to have a title for the proposal. The introduction explains why we think we need the world to agree to this proposal, and then the main text explains what the proposal is. So again, go in there and play around, but the resources is, the resource section is impressive. There's more stuff in there, and I didn't even finish that. I'm going back to it, sorry. Because it's got the scenario, it's got the country. There is all kinds of stuff in there. So if I go to biodiversity, well, let's go to global warming. It brings up, again, more stuff than you could possibly use. And then also, we have a glossary. So if there are terms that you are not familiar with, the glossary can tell you what all those terms mean. So there's tons of it. So again, more stuff than we could possibly use.
Can you scroll down and see if NACBA's in there?
What do you want? Oh, NACBA?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just curious if it'll be there for other people to look at or not, or if they'll have to like actually Google it.
Yeah, no. They'll have to ask us what it means. NACBA's not in there. I think they think that's too specialized. Because it's obviously specific to us.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of stuff in here. So, any questions about the website? Let me just go back.
Do you want us to go in there and look at, like, you popped up like the environment one, the global, and do you want us to go through there, and then if there's anything we think is important, add it to the opening statements for you?
Well, there's so much in there that you can get in there and never come out of it.
Okay.
But if you, I would go through and see if there's something maybe pertinent to our situation, whether it's water or, or details that maybe Joyce brought up with the simulation scenario and you want to know more about it. I mean, I would use it selectively because really you could spend the rest of the semester doing nothing else but reading, especially if it aids our cause as Palestine. So my suggestion is just go in there and play around with it because it is quite complete. And, you can do this on the other countries. So, if you want to know what's going on in North Korea, the United States, the only one that came up blank this morning, I don't know why. So, nothing happening now. Anyways, I guess I'd have to go to resources. So for some reason, there's nothing there. And certainly with the other countries, it'll take me back. Like I was doing North Korea this morning with our North Koreans. They give you a lot of information on it too. So even if you're researching other countries to figure out if they could be our allies, this one's fascinating because if you look at press freedom, the Koreans do not regard that as the Sea of Japan because of their animosity to Japan. They call it the East Sea. They refuse the way they would treat it. So the rest of the world calls that the Sea of Japan. The Koreans call it the East Sea. So geography could be politics too. But to go back to your question, you could just go in there and play around because we've got the beginnings of the opening statements. We're moving along pretty good. We gotta do some more work, but we're on target, and, you know, this can now inform you if you need more information.
Does the negotiation have like an overarching goal, like of all the countries working together? Because I know I want to work on our like opening statement more this weekend. And how did you phrase it again?
I had put that we need to, like, something along the lines of an overall idea of working toward global warming, climate change, resolution, stuff like that, to make the world like available for future generations. Is that like I think that's what we're asking, if it's the overall goal, or if,
Well, the overall goal of the simulation is to give you a glimpse into how international negotiations take place in the real world, which sometimes means, because I do a lot of negotiation in local government, sometimes people don't want stuff to happen. So some countries will go in there and deliberately try to block stuff. So it's meant to be real, like the North Koreans need help desperately. And their opening statement is not going to say that, but they're going to do everything they can to extort help out of the rest of the world to keep them going. In our case, as Palestine, we want an independent nation state. Countries don't necessarily go into negotiations to do what's right for the world. They sometimes package it that way. Like in our case, because we have absolutely no power, the only thing we can do is to try to call attention to the injustice being done to us and raise the consciousness of the world so that we can get our own independent country. But I would suggest to you, countries always package it that way, but it doesn't mean that's what they're really doing. So what's the overall goal? To give you an experience with trying to get people to negotiate and to get to an agreement that you think will be beneficial to you out of the negotiation or proposal. But sometimes you got to give in order to gain. So and I haven't talked that much about how to negotiate yet, but that's basically what it's supposed to do. It's to teach you how to negotiate, in our case, from the perspective of Palestine. What is our goal? I would suggest one of our goals is to have an independent nation state. I would suggest that's got to be one of our proposals. I would also suggest that it'll probably be an exercise in frustration, because the United States is certainly going to push back. So then we got to start thinking, well, who might work with us? China might even push back because they're fearful, at least that's our perspective. Well, then they might think, well, keeping Palestine and Israel separate is better for the world. So once we get our ideas set, we got to start looking at how would the other countries approach us. And the United States is clearly not supportive of anything that the Palestinians want to do. On the other hand, the EU is. How to negotiate to get our goals. Be nice if it was for the benefit of the world as a whole, and we can certainly package it that way. But I'm not going to say that sometimes people don't try to do the right thing. They do, even countries, but, you know, certainly under the Trump administration, he's cut his ties with so much of the world and just said, I'm here for America first. So, I think the overall goal is to get as close to the real world as possible so that we can see how frustrating it is to actually get anything done in the world. I mean, even if you work like I do in local government, I have to go to another meeting at 5:30 because we've been working on a project for 2 years that the Planning Commission, which I chair, doesn't want to approve it. And legally, we have the right to turn it down. But even at the local level, it gets so damn complicated. I mean, this project is sucking the life out of me. And at the international level, it's even more complicated. So I think it's better to ask the question, what is it that Palestine wants to get?
I did change that.
Yeah, and I did find the sentence, I was just wondering, like, would it be unrealistic or like untrue to say that we're all here in an effort to bring this world together into harmony so that we can move forward and focus on larger matters at hand, such as peace and prosperity of the world.
Yeah, that's us packaging into it, saying, all nations think they're doing what's right for the world, even North
So is
Korea
that okay to
does.
say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in our case, just Palestine, that's all we got.
All right.
Now, when you get to the point of seeing the North Korean ones, they're going to be very adamant about how they're the superior society and the world's trying to screw them and blah, blah, in more diplomatic language. So all the opening statements should clearly reflect the country. Now, in our case, wrapping it up in language that this is in the interest of justice for the world, that's fine, because there are other countries like Kurdistan who want their own nation state. The Catalonians in Spain want their own nation state. There's even noise again in Canada about the province of Alberta talking about maybe leaving Canada. So this is not unusual that people find themselves in countries they don't want to be in. Ours is somewhat unusual because of the oppression by Israel and the backing by the United States. But
I just didn't know if like other countries would read that and say like, well, we're not here to like work on harmony. I don't know if there's like anybody that.
nobody's going to say that.
Okay.
Everybody wraps it in the nice language, except the North Koreans. They're just going to be.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I don't know if they would like attack that statement or anything
Well,
like
and
that.
even if you listen to President Trump, he doesn't. I think he's rather crude and rude, but that's his style.
Mhm.
Some people say there's method behind his madness because by doing that, he keeps everybody guessing all the time what he's really doing. I don't know if it's that well thought out by him. I tend to think not, but so what you'll see is lots of different styles. But in our case, we've got to wrap it in that language you just quoted, because it's kind of like what Martin Luther King said that one time, that as long as one of us doesn't have his rights, none of us have our rights. And so when he would often talk that way and wrap it in moral language that this is the right thing to do. It's in the interest of justice. So sort of high-minded phrases, but certainly that's all we've got. We can throw stones, which hasn't gotten us very far, or we can try to negotiate a deal by appealing to the better nature of people and saying, look, this just isn't right. And it actually has slowly but surely been getting us a fair amount of traction. So that kind of language from us is totally appropriate.
Okay.
But you might have to teach the world a little bit about what's going on and what has been going on. The Koreans will be using some Korean words because it's essential. We obviously make reference to Nakba. So you had a question, Cassie, or was I hallucinating?
No, you answered it.
Oh, I did. I didn't even know what the question was, and I answered.
Yeah, it was just like about like, why don't we use more harsher language like the Koreans do? But you just said like that didn't work and the softer language got us further.
Yeah, when I look at our three delegations, Korea will be the harshest, the European Union will be the softest, and we will be somewhere in between. But since we have no power to fall back on, the only thing we do have is that appeal to doing what's right. North Korea, they're developing nuclear weapons, and I'm sure they have them. And so they could easily launch one on South Korea easily before we could respond. And they could flatten South Korea and 26,000 American troops. Now, I think if they do that, that would be pretty stupid. Because the United States, well, obviously, if you kill 26,000 Americans and their dependents, we're gonna retaliate. But they have weapons. We, as the PA, we don't have any weapons. We don't have a port. We don't have an airport. Our two territories are separated. I mean, what else have we got but high-minded language?
I was just wondering because like the way it seems to me is the Palestinians really have nothing to lose, but they also get worse. They'd be such to an extreme that it might help us in the long run. Saying, look we're trying to get something here, and they just made it worse for us.
Yeah, we have to keep appealing to doing justice. And when I was there, we asked some of the people who are active in rights cases as lawyers at universities, and they said things are getting worse daily. And being there, people are moving around trying to live their lives, but under severe constraints and limitations. And I don't know how you can make it worse, but they said over the last few years, it's gotten worse. And part of it is, at least with the United States, the Trump administration certainly has made it worse. So, yeah. Well, that's why in the Intifada, people finally just couldn't take it anymore. Just, even though it did them no good, they rose up in rage and just started throwing stones. Maybe. Come on, machine. Oh, this will help if I just on the camera. So, there's how to access the community. There's the simulation number. For our username, you can either put in Palestine or Palestinian Authority, and then there's that.
Sensitive?
I believe so, but I don't really know. I mean, in the old days, things were much more case sensitive. It seems to be less and less so, but it's all in capitals, so I would do it in capitals.
Okay.
So with this, you can go in and play around with it. And I'm really backed up on opening statements from all three delegations, but that's okay. Wanted you to have a tour of the website. Very easy to use, point and click. So if I can do it, you guys can do it. That's my rule. Okay, I'm sorry I went a little over, so as soon as you write all this down, it's free to go, and I'll see you on Swell Monday.
Did you send me your? I was trying to think of something like that. Yeah, we can look at some.
Are you in the group of
So I can send all of us.
you said you sent me a little month today? I don't believe that say it was not even, just let me know. I didn't want to join there if they didn't want to.
Yeah. I was gonna leave. You're in?
You can just email me if you have any questions.
Okay.
I'll work on it a little bit more as well as we can.
Yeah.